All right, thank you. Good evening. My name is A.P. Duran, and it's my privilege to serve as the Dean of the College of Humanities. What I would like to do to get started tonight is to read the land acknowledgement, please. We respectfully acknowledge the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the O'odham and the Yaqui. Committed to diversity and inclusion, the university strives to build sustainable relationships with sovereign native nations and indigenous communities through education offerings, partnerships, and community service. Something else that I would like for us to do tonight before we start the event is to acknowledge our colleague. We lost one of our colleagues here at the University of Arizona last week. It was quite a tragic event that all of us went through and continue to go through. And I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge our colleague Thomas Mechner, and saying that we have our thoughts for him and his family and relatives and all of our colleagues and students in the College of Science and on campus. We thought it was important to acknowledge this at the beginning of the event tonight. So thank you very much. Tonight, we celebrate this month in October, the National Arts and Humanities Month. It's every year in October. And what tradition we have been doing for a few years now is the Tucson Humanities Festival, with a series of events and performances and lectures throughout the month of October. Every year we choose a theme for this event, and the theme for this year that we are celebrating the community. It's a theme of community for all of the events that we are presenting throughout the month of October. We would like to thank tonight's sponsors for the festival, the Borchardt Foundation Center on the Literary, the University of Arizona Health Sciences Innovation in Healthy Aging Program, and the Office of Faculty Affairs. We would also like to thank our Tucson Humanities Festival sponsors who helped make the festival possible, in particular Bookman's Entertainment Exchange and the Humanities Seminars Program. We would also like to thank Bookman's for the gift card that we are giving away tonight. If you put in your information for the Enter to Win, please make sure you stay at the end of the reading for the drawing and to find out if you are the lucky winner. Tonight, we have the great pleasure of listening to Rita Dove as part of our Poetry Center's 2022-23 reading and lecture series. I would now like to introduce Diana Delgado, who is the Literary Director for the Poetry Center. Thank you.
I knew that was going to happen. Always happens. Thank you, AP. Welcome, everyone. As you can see, we've been busy over at the Poetry Center, and we are thrilled to collaborate with the Tucson Humanities Festival for tonight's event to celebrate the force that is Rita Dove. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. I've read and followed Rita for so long, and now she's here in person, and it's kind of bananas for me, so thank you for just sort of bearing with my nervousness. I'm going to try and be as brief as I can so that we can focus on Rita's reading tonight. But before I do that, I want to just bring up and invite up to the mic two individuals that I will be sharing a little bit about them first, and then I'll invite them up. So I would first like to briefly introduce Michael Spurgeon and Stephanie Robbins. After I share a bit about them, I'd like to invite Michael up, and then I would like Stephanie to come up to introduce Rita. Michael Borchardt is the director of the Borchert Center on Literary Arts, and it is a foundation that works to create a community of literary artists from across the Americas to foster meaningful connections between people, cultures, and the natural world by offering prizes, fellowship, and an annual 2-week retreat for recipients in San Cristobal de las Casas, Chiapas, Mexico. The Borchert Foundation Center on Literary Arts encourages fellowships among leading practitioners and seeds the creation of new work. And after this reading, if you have time, please go to their website to check out some of the artists that they are curating and supporting. It's just a spectacular list. The next person I want to share a bit about is Dr. Stephanie Trumpman Robbins, she, her, who is a Black feminist scholar, mother of 3, and first-generation college student. She is a department head of gender and women's studies at the University of Arizona and is also an associate professor at the gender and women's studies and English. I will be returning back to the stage at the very end of the reading just to share a bit about book sales and how we're going to do that, and a little bit about our upcoming event with Sandra Cisneros, which will be coming up in about 3 weeks. So for right now, I'd like to invite Michael up. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Spurgeon, and I am the Executive Vice President of the Albert and Elaine Borchert Foundation, as well as the Director of the Borchert Foundation Center on Literary Arts. I'm also a graduate of the University of Arizona MFA program and a former employee of the University of Arizona Poetry Center. So this budding collaboration between our two organizations, now in its 2nd year, is particularly close to my heart. Tonight is made even more special because I consider Rita Dove and her husband Fred to be personal friends. The mission of the Borchert Center on Literary Arts is to create a community of artists from across the Americas to foster meaningful connections between people, cultures, and the natural world. To achieve this mission, the center awards El Gran Balam, a 3-year, $150,000 prize going to a mid-career writer. The award is currently held by Yucatec poet Briseida Cuevas Cobb. We also provide multiple $30,000 fellowships to writers from Canada, Mexico, and the United States in various stages of their careers as a means to acknowledge the extraordinary work they have already done, to support future work, and to facilitate their attendance at our annual retreat and encuentro held each January in San Cristobal de las Casas, Mexico. We are profoundly pleased to include Rita Dove in this fellowship of writers. To further pursue our mission, we partner with like-minded organizations such as 916 Inc., a Sacramento nonprofit that empowers youth by turning them into published writers, SNA It's Ibahom, an organization dedicated to preserving and promoting indigenous languages, literacy, and cultures in the highlands of Chiapas, Mexico, and the University of Arizona Poetry Center, a world-renowned institution that surely needs no introduction to all of you. In partnership with the Poetry Center, the Center on Literary Arts will sponsor a reading by one of the writers from our fellowship list in the annual Poetry Center reading series. Last year, in the inaugural event, the writer was an old friend of the Poetry Center, Luis Alberto Urrea. And this year, the Borchert Center on Literary Arts is thrilled to help host another old friend of the Poetry Center, poet and national treasure, Rita Dove. Yeah, please. While there is only one Rita Dove, it is our sincere hope that in the years to come, this partnership will bring many other writers of vision, humanity, and gravitas to this acclaimed series and the people of Tucson. I thank you, and I hope you enjoy tonight's event.
Good evening. When my treasured friend and colleague, Diana Delgado, the literary director of the Poetry Center, who is a brilliant writer in her own right, and has added so much vibrancy to our creative community here, invited me to offer a very brief introduction of poet and trailblazer Rita Dove, the quite singular Rita Dove. I thought, wow, this is the moment I survived the pandemic for. An incredible opportunity. It is truly my good fortune to stand before you tonight. Of course, Rita Dove requires no introduction. In 1993, she was the youngest poet and first African-American poet ever to be named U.S. Poet Laureate, and served 2 terms during which she strove to bring access to the literary arts to a wider range of communities. She is a Pulitzer Prize winner. She has been awarded 29 honorary doctorates. Rita Dove is the only poet honored with both the National Humanities Medal and the National Medal of Arts. In 2021, she was awarded the Gold Medal for Poetry from the American Academy of Arts and Letters. Rita Dove is the author of several collections of poetry, including Collected Poems 1974 to 2004, which was shortlisted for the National Book Award, American Smooth, On the Bus with Rosa Parks, and the Pulitzer Prize-winning collection Thomas and Beulah. In addition to writing a novel, short stories, and a play that was produced at the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts in Washington, D.C., she edited the Penguin Anthology of 20th Century Poetry. Her recent works include Sonata Melodica and Playlist for the Apocalypse, which Guernica Magazine Review calls a beautiful collection in which Dove takes us from the smallest moments of redemption to catastrophic failures of the human soul. In a 2021 interview for World Literature Today, Rita Dove observed that poetry is the repository of our collective emotional memory. In a poem published that same year, Incantation of the First Order, Dove offers the lines, "To those inclined toward kindness, I say, come out of your houses drumming. All others, beware. I have discarded my smile, but not my teeth." A most appropriate response to the difficult social, cultural, and political circumstances in which we currently find ourselves, the urgency of now in a complex tango with always pending futures. Rita Dove understands the art of magnifying moments, big and small, into eternity. She sketches the ordinary with pristine precision that is at once familiar and otherworldly. Powerfully, she wields archive and ephemera into critical magic. I encourage you to discover yourself in the worlds Rita Dove's word magic has crafted. Read as many of her poems as you can. In Dove's 1992 poem, a personal favorite, Demeter's Prayer to Hades, Dove's speaker tells us there are no curses, only mirrors held up to the souls of gods and mortals. Tonight, may Rita Dove's presence among us conjure and stir our collective emotional memory. May this reading invoke our spirits and our imaginations in ways that reflect back to us the humanity yet unrealized, which we owe each other in pursuit of our continued survival. It is my great honor and pleasure to welcome the legendary poet, Rita Dove.
Stephanie, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. I hope I can live up to it. And thank you all for being here. I want to thank Michael Spurgeon and the Borchard Foundation, and Diana Delgado, and everyone at the Poetry Center. It is a home away from home for me. I've been here reading several times. It always feels like a haven, a place, one of those true kind of way stops or inns for the weary traveler. Because here I know that that you're reading poetry, you're living it, you're breathing it, and communing spirit to spirit. That's what it's all about, right? So I was thinking about this, the theme for the festival, and that it is community, which to me, I feel like poems are, in a sense, it's the best kind of community there can be. And it's an honor, therefore, for me to be able to read to you tonight. I'm going to be reading from Playlist for the Apocalypse. I never know exactly what I'm going to be reading. The poem that Stephanie had just quoted, Demeter's Prayer to Hades, it's very special for me because at the moment, some of those words are on their way to Jupiter. They're in a space capsule. So I think it's kind of amazing. I don't know what those aliens are going to make of it, but hey, what the heck. I'm going to make sure that I can do this right. First of all, I'm going to start with the very first poem because it seems to me that it's a poem that, though it looks like it is dissing prose writers, it's actually an acknowledgement of the hardship that goes into every writing. And also because this poem was inspired by a young poet who lived here in Tucson. His name was Morgan Schult, and he had actually been my student at the University of Virginia. Then he came here to the University of Arizona, got his MFA here, started a magazine of prose poems that featured exclusively prose poems, and then wrote to me and said, would you contribute to the magazine? And I said to him, I'm not sure I believe in the prose poem, because this was our relationship. I would challenge him and he would come back and we would, and of course, I sent him the prose poem. Prose in a small space. It's supposed to be prose if it runs on and on, isn't it? All those words, too many to fall into rank and file, stumbling bare-ass drunk onto the field, reporting for duty. Yes, sir, spilling out as shamelessly as the glut from a mega-billion-dollar chemical facility. Just the amount of glittering effluvium it takes to transport a little girl across a room. Beige carpet, thick under her Oxfords, curtains blousy with spring. Is that the scent of daffodils drifting in? Daffodils don't smell, but prose doesn't care. Prose likes to hear itself talk. Prose is development and denouement, anticipation hovering near the canopies, lust rampant in the antipasto. For example, a silver fork fingered sadly as the heroine crumples a linen napkin in her lap to keep from crying out at the sight of Lord Campion's regal brow inclined tenderly toward the wealthy young widow. Prose applauds such syntactical dalliances. Then, is it poetry if it's confined? Trembling along its axis, a flagpole come alive in high wind, flapping its radiant sleeve for attention. Over here, it's me, while the white spaces, air, field, early morning silence before the school bell, shape themselves around that one bright seizure. And if that's so, what do we have here? A dream or 3 paragraphs? We have white space too. Is this music? As for all the words left out, banging at the gates, we could let them in, but where would we go with our orders, our stuttering pride? That is for Morgan Of course, that core family, you know, the one that they supposedly always has to take you in no matter what. That core family has been for me a real source of love and contention and all those things. But one thing we did agree on was that for all of the picnic holidays like Labor Day and Memorial Day, that we would get together and eat. Food was the connecting force. And so I grew up in, as many of you may know, I grew up in the Midwest, you can probably hear that, and yet, in Akron, Ohio. And yet, because of the politics of this nation, and most of my neighbors and most of my relatives came from the South, looking for jobs in the 20s. And so there's a curious and interesting sense of moving that Southern cuisine and language all the way up into the Midwest. Family reunion. 30 seconds into the barbecue, my Cleveland cousins have everyone speaking Southern. Broadened vowels and dropped consonants, whoops and caws. It's more osmosis than magic. A sliding thrall back to a time when working the tire factories meant entire neighborhoods coming up from Georgia or Tennessee, accents helplessly intact. While their children, inflections flattened to match the field they thought they were playing on, knew without asking when it was safe to roll out a drawl. Just as it's understood, potluck means resurrecting the food we've abandoned along the way for the sake of sleeker thighs. I look over the yard to the porch with its battalion of aunts, the wavering ranks of uncles at the grill. Everywhere else, hordes of progeny are swirling, and my cousins yakking on as if they were waist deep in quicksand, but like the books recommend, aren't moving until someone hauls them free. Who are all these children? Who had them and with whom? Through the general coffee tones, the shame genetics cut a creamy swath. Cherokee's burnt umber transposed onto generous lips. A glance flares gray above the crushed nose we label anonymous African. It's all here. The beautiful geometry of Mendel's peas and their grim logic. And though we remain clearly divided on the merits of okra, there's still time to demolish the cheese grits and tear into slow-cooked ribs so tender we agree they're worth the extra pound or two our menfolk swear will always bring them home. Pity the poor soul who lives a life without butter. Those pinched knees and tennis shoulders and hatchety smiles. Thank you. Thank you. You don't have to clap after each poem. Though I must say I'm on the side of not liking okra. My husband loves it, and we have this argument all the time. It's a consistency thing, you know. My mother was one of those people who never descended the stairs in the morning without either rouge or lipstick on. The idea was that you always had to be ready for the day. And then she was ready. She passed away a couple of years ago, but I found a picture of her in 1946, right before she got married the next year, and she is with her girlfriends out on the town. This is right after World War II. This poem is for her. Girls on the Town, 1946. You love a red lip. The dimples are extra currency, though you take care to keep powder from caking those charmed valleys. Mascara? Check. Blush? Oh yes. And a hat is never wrong, except evenings in the clubs. There, a deeper ruby and smoldering eye will do the trick, with tiny embellishments, a ribbon or jewel, perhaps a flower, if one is feeling especially flirty or sad. Until Rosie fired up her rivets, flaunting was a male prerogative. Now you and your girls have lacquered up and pinned on your tail feathers, fit to sally forth and trample, each plopped heart quivering at the tips of your patent leather Mary Janes. This is the only power you hold on to, ripped from the dreams none of you believed are worth the telling. Instead of mumbling, why not decorate? Even in dim light, how you glister, slow-eyed, your smile in flames. I'm debating. This poem is a golden shovel. It's a form that Terence Hayes developed in homage to Gwendolyn Brooks. I think mainly it's the idea that you must write a poem in which all of the end words, you pick a line from Gwendolyn Brooks' work, and then the end words of your poem have to spell out that line. And the line that from Gwendolyn Brooks' work that I took is, you kiss all the great-lipped girls that you can. From the sidelines. It seems I have always sat here watching men like you, who turn heads, whose gaze is either a kiss or a slap or the whiplash of pure disregard. Why fret? All you're doing is walking. You're this year's it, the one righteous integer of cool, cruising down a great-lipped channel of hushed adoration. Women turned girls again, brightening in spite of themselves. That brave, wilting smile, you don't see it, do you? How she tells herself to move on, blinks until she can. My daughter, who is now a professor in her own right up at Arizona State, it's so strange for me to realize that, but when she was 5 or 4, about that age, used to walk around the house proclaiming that nobody loved her but the spring cricket. And, children have these ways of getting under your skin, and you can't. It was her power. And we could not figure out who the spring cricket was. I even couldn't figure out if there were spring crickets and autumn crickets or whatever. And so what does a poet do? You become the spring cricket, and you talk about them. So I began writing poems from the spring cricket's point of view, and actually with her blessing. And so here's a couple of them, okay? And then I don't think I'm through with them. I think there are going to be more. But this is the first one that appeared. It's called The Spring Cricket Considers the Question of Negritude. I was playing my tunes all by myself. I didn't know anybody else who could play along. Sure, the tunes were sad, but sweet too, and wouldn't come until the day gave out. You know that way the sky has of dangling her last bright wisps? That's when the ache would bloom inside until I couldn't wait. I knelt down to scrape myself clean and didn't care who heard. Then came the shouts and whistles, the roundup into jars, a clamber of legs. Now there were others, tumbled, clouded. I didn't know their names. We were a musical lantern. Children slept to our rasping sighs. And if now and then one of us shook free and sang as he climbed to the brim, he would always fall again, which made them laugh and clap their hands. At least then we knew what pleased them and where the brink was. The spring cricket repudiates his parable of negritude. Hell, we just climbed, reached the lip and fell back, slipped and started up again, climbed to be climbing, sang to be singing. It's just what we do. No one bothered to analyze our blues until everybody involved was strung out or dead. To solve everything that was happening while it was happening would have taken some serious opium. Seriously, all wisdom is afterthought, a sort of helpless relief. So don't go thinking none of this grief belongs to you, even if you don't know how it feels to fall. You can get my drift. And I, who live it daily, have heard that perfect word enough to know just when to use it, as in, oh hell, hell no. No, this is hell. The spring cricket's grievance, little outburst. Tired of singing for someone else, tired of rubbing my thighs to catch your ear. When the sky falls tonight, I'll stand on my one green leaf, and it will be my time, my noise, my ecstasy. I'm a night person, so that sometimes I feel it's night and it's mine. And I was really happy to discover that my daughter actually had used that poem as a screensaver for a while. It was to inspire her to write her doctoral defense, her thesis. There are many sections in this book which revolve around each other and talk to each other, though they are contained units. The Spring Crickets is one of them. Another one of those is a group of poems that meditate on all the different meanings of the word ghetto throughout the ages, starting from its first known appearance in a document describing how the Jews in Venice in the 16th century were to be placed in the ghet, which was a word for slag. It was a word for where they dumped the ore, the residue of the factories, the foundries. And so with that first, pushing of a group of people onto a land or circumscribing them, that's where the word began. I'm going to read to you a few of those poems, I think 3 of them. Of course, one of the thing that we think of, 2 things that we think of when we think of the word ghetto are our own, the ones we have so creatively created in this country. But also there are ghettos of the spirit and the soul and all of that. One of the more horrific consequences of that, of course, is World War II and the concentration camps. And one of the most ingenious and therefore horrifying manifestations of a concentration camp was the one at Theresienstadt, or Terezin. This one was ingenious because they modeled it as it was supposed to be the model concentration camp. It was the one that could be flipped in an instant to look like everything was going okay. They tended to put the composers, the artists, the writers, the musicians, all in this concentration camp. And whenever the Red Cross came through, they would quickly give them fresh clothes and instruments and say, have them march, do a cheerful parade so that the Red Cross could think everything is going okay. This poem is spoken from the voice of a survivor of Theresienstadt by the name of Alice, or Elitza Herz-Sommer. And she did survive. She was a pianist. Transit. This is the house that music built. Each note of fingertips purchase, rung upon rung, laddering across the unspeakable world. As for those other shrill facades, rigged for a day porticos composed to soothe regiments of eyes, guilt-reddened, lining the parade route, horn flash, woodwind wail, well, let them cheer. I won't speak judgment on the black water passing for coffee, white water for soup. We supped instead each night on Chopin, hummed our grief-soaked lullabies to the rapture rippling through. Let it be said, while in the midst of horror, we fed on beauty. And that, my love, is what sustained us. The children were, of course, not allowed, of course, to go to school, and yet they did try, many, especially in Terezin, they tried to educate the kids. It was exceedingly dangerous. They had to post a lookout, and usually were hiding in a hayloft or something like that, so that they could learn in the midst of this. Orders of the day. After the bellowed call to rise, the cold dribble wash up before making our cots. After chores were dealt out as we crumbled bread into sour cabbage, then fell in line to be totted up, numbers matched to fates. There was a moment before the scramble to class, lookouts posted below the attic hutch, no more than a flicker, a bright, brutal remembering. When we became ourselves again, cowlicked and plated, flush with pocketed apples or tucked away sweets. We were not hunched in rain being counted or shivering under rafters, trying to keep pace with our dreams of the outside world. We were merely children. And that brief forgetting, that raging stupor, we tried to hold quiet in our heads, as if in a brimming goblet, until the day lurched upright, barking its orders. That moment was either the most blissful or shattering instant we would live through on earth. this hard and sullen earth we no longer recognized, but would, sooner than later, commit our souls to, when at last our bodies crumbled into their final resting place. This one is for the 1619 project. I was asked to contribute a poem and found that this voice speaking out to me, wanting to speak. The speaker is one of the 4 young girls who were at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, the day that it was bombed. Youth Sunday. This morning's already good. Summer's cooling, Addie chattering like a magpie, but today we are leading the congregation. Ain't that a fine thing? All in white like angels. They'll be sighing when we appear at the pulpit and proclaim, "Open your hymnals." Addie, what's the page number again? Never mind, it'll be posted. I think. I hope. Hold still, Carol, or else this sash will never sit right. There, now you do mine. Almost 11. I'm ready. My, don't we look? What's that word the Reverend used in last Sunday's sermon? Oh, I got it. Ethereal. Another one of the, I'm going to stop that. It was a very dark thing to have to work through, that section, working on all of those poems. And this next group of poems, and I'm only going, they're very short, these poems, but were equally taxing, but in a certain way exhilarating, because I was working in a collaboration with a composer. The composer, Richard Daniel Poor, had approached me and asked me if I was interested in working with him on a song cycle. And the song cycle was going to depict the last 50, 60 years of American history, with one standing witness who would turn out to be the Statue of Liberty. And the very, the chutzpah of saying, oh, we're just gonna, do 60 years of history in 12 songs, was in a certain way the reason why I said yes, And also the fact to be able to work with a musician. I love working across genres, and that challenge of not writing songs, but writing poems that could be sung is a different thing. And so we pushed and challenged each other. We had very different writing processes, so that was hard to deal with, but we managed. And I really felt that it kind of taught me stuff too, which is what every writer, I think, wants to at some point be learning always. I knew that the voice was going to be a mezzo-soprano. I knew that Susan Graham was going to sing it, and so that mezzo-soprano voice was always behind me. But I never thought, okay, the music's going to carry this. The poems have to stand by themselves. So let me read to you just, they also all have to be a certain length. If you're going to sing something, it has to be the length of a German Lieder or Lied. It has to be about, the length of a sonnet, though it doesn't have to be a sonnet. So I will read to you 3, which are going to hop through history. And I'm going to start with this one, which is the first testimony. 1968. 1968 was a year of great turmoil. It was a year when I think many thought this country was going to break apart. Assassinations, King and Kennedy, and it just seemed that what it needed was a villanelle, a broken villanelle, one that stops before it's finished. You're tired, you're poor. Who comforts you now that the wheel has broken? No more princes for the poor. Loss whittling you thin. Grief is the constant now, hope the last word spoken. In a dance of two elegies, which circles the drain? A token year with its daisies and carbines is where we begin. Who comforts you now? That the wheel has broken is Mechanics 101. To keep dreaming when the joke's on you? Well, crazier legends have been written. Grief is the constant now. Hope the last word spoken on a motel balcony, shouted in a hotel kitchen. No kin can make this journey for you. The roots locked in. Who comforts you now that the wheel has broken the bodies of its makers? Beyond the smoke and ashes, what you hear rising is nothing but the wind. Who comforts you? Now that the wheel has broken, grief is the constant. Hope, the last word spoken. Woman Aflame, Roe v. Wade. She was a mother. She was a girl who dreamed of becoming a mother someday. She was either a tease or a tramp, a lover or a wife. Still, she had to do the counting, was accused of lacking spontaneity, being a cold-hearted bitch. But if the days didn't add up, she'd end up straddling a cold table in a dingy back room or waving goodbye future. She was jogging on the late shift, unlocking her car, and though she still remembered the tart smack of his sweat when he held her down, horseradish on his tongue, none of this was she permitted to say, while lawyers argued her rights to privacy, citing statute and precedent until the court declared enough, and she and her body were free to go. But it wasn't enough. And here's one a little later in the series. All the titles are taken from lines on Emma Lazarus' poem that's etched on the Statue of Liberty. Keep your storied pomp. 12th testimony, Trump. Granted, it felt good at first to snicker, but now the rooster won't shut up. How exhausting waking to that imperious caw. Old McDonald's downsized to a flower pot, here a body, there a body sent packing, caged. Everywhere somebody muddied. Welcome to the age of Babel. Here a Twitter, there a tweet, a tiki torch march back to the good old times of mayhem and murder, hollow points blossoming all over. Everywhere a body bloody, even the earth is bleeding out. Oh, indolent friends, bitter patriots, what have you triggered that can't be undone? During the performance of the song cycle, which was quite amazing, we looked for people walking out. That was the one they would walk out on if they did. And then we'd say, yes, go. Sorry, guys. Charlottesville, tiki torches, we mentioned in the last one, and Charlottesville is where I'm from. This is where I live. It's a quiet college town, like many in this country, but unlike many in this country, I guess there were a few statues that needed to be gotten rid of. And it went on and on and on. This poem was written right before the statues came down. They were still there. Pedestrian crossing, Charlottesville. A gaggle of girls giggle over the bricks leading off Court Square. We break dutifully and wait, but there's at least 20 of these knob-kneed creatures, blonde and curly, still at an age that thinks impudence is cute. Look how they dart and dither, changing flanks as they lurch along, golden gobbets of infuriating foolishness or pure joy, depending on one's disposition. At the moment, mine is sour. This is taking far too long. Don't they have minders? Just behind my shoulder in the city park, the Southern General still stands, stonewalling us all. When I was their age, I judged Goldilocks nothing more than a pint-sized criminal who flounced into others' lives, then assumed their clemency. Unfair, I know, my aggression. To lump them into a gaggle, silly geese, when all they're guilty of is being young. So far. Where are we at? I'm going to, let's see, I think I'm going to read 3 more poems. And this one, there are a lot of sonnets in this book, which I wasn't even aware of, as I was writing them. It's a wonderful form, but one of the things I argue against is all the time is the assumption that a sonnet has to be a love poem. And so this sonnet is in a section in the book called 8 Angry Odes. Kind of a contradiction in terms or not. And it's called A Sonnet for the Sonnet. You have occupied the rose garland throne for so long. No one remembers a time when love wasn't a portable feast, metaphorical conceits sung to the gimpy tread of a heartbeat. That true rhyme equals contentment, a neatened song we've learned to yearn for? My dumpling, that is entirely your doing. A glittering fait accompli we've been duped into trying to make reality, complete with lute-plucked warbling under a moon-splashed lattice. Let's face it, love is messy or boring or hurts like hell and then is gone. Even when we're satisfied, beyond the garden gate, the rest waits. All those years you never thought to mention. No matter how the cake is sliced, some choice bits break off. It's nearly wide enough for 2, this sugar-coated ledge. We clamber on for one more lick of the jagged edge. The last section of the book contains quite a few poems that deal with illness, and we're dealing with the regimen of controlling illness. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis about 20 years ago or so, and have been exceedingly lucky with my doctors and with my medication. But there's always that moment when life changes, right? When you know that it changes. And the first poem in this section, which is called Little Book of Woe, is that moment when I got the final diagnosis. Soup. When the doctor said, "I've got good news and bad news," I thought of soup. How long it had been since I had had the homemade kind, the real deal, where you soak the beans overnight and everything is apportioned in stages. First the onions and meat browned in oil, then the broth added for hours of simmering, all that saturated, glistening scent stoking the house with memories. The Jewish boy I kissed until we both sank to our knees in the grass, my mother's frown as she plucked weeds from my hair. Oh, my mother will die from this, my mother whose soup is the best, even though it was always oversalted because it was labored over. It was ladled out unconditionally, tendered sweetly, without consequences, a non-judicial love. And it was always soup I got first thing in the sick bed, and there's the way tomatoes are added at the last moment, but the minor vegetables, peas and corn and tiny diced potatoes, come in 30 minutes before that. And how the spices, the spices, are to be doled out sparingly, then waiting to see how strong they'd become in the brew, their hidden aptitudes unlocked only by time and the heat of a burbling melange. And the way my apron always got stained, but I wouldn't wash it, proud of the mess for once, making mistakes, sloshing and dripping. Yes, soup was what I wanted, not news, but the slow courage of the lentil as it softened, its heart splitting into wings. Not good cop, bad cop, but the swift metallic smack of too much time administered hastily, the kind of mistake you never make again. Bread, too. I wanted the whole thick, crusty hump of it laid out for vivisection. Here is my body, eat. And lots of red wine that always feels like it's greasing my bones with lava. Here is my blood. And then the bad news came. Whoever listens to the good? And before I answered, before the questions and the arched eyebrow of my husband standing in the doorway could fall into pity and helplessness, I thought, yes, I'll make a soup tonight, a soup fit for the gods. And I will end with another spring cricket poem because I think the spring cricket always should get the last word. There's an epigraph to the poem from the opera Cinderella, Cendrillon, Stay by the Hearth, Little Cricket. Postlude. You prefer me invisible, no more than a crisp salute far away from your silks and firewood and woolens. Out of sight, I'm merely an annoyance, one slim, obstinate wrinkle in night's deepening trance. When sleep fails, you wish me shushed and back in my hole. As usual, you're not listening. Time stops only if you stop long enough to hear it passing. This is my business. I've got 10 weeks left to croon through. What you hear is a lifetime of song. Thank you all. Thank you. No.
to draw the winner of the Bookman's gift card. So I'm going to do that now and announce that. Wow. This is amazing. Okay, once I read this name, you will be picking up your certificate over at the College of Humanities table. Very lucky, Susan Maley. Susan Maley. Are they here? Oh, she's way up at the top. That's so dramatic. Congratulations. She's descending the staircase now. Thank you so much. Okay, so you're going to go to the Humanities table. We trust that you are Susan. You're welcome. Great. Thank you all for coming tonight. Again, Rita will be signing books. We're going to help organize that. We just thank you so much for being here. Have a good night.